Good morning everyone, how is it going? Eric here, and today we have a review, that's right, for SteamWorld Quest. Now, before we can even get into this review, I feel like we need to talk about that elephant card in the room. That's right, SteamWorld Quest and its card combat system, which has had me frustrated, it's had me worried, it's had me anxious. And after 14 hours with the game, I've got to say, I love it! But you might not. Now, it's going to take some time for me to explain the story of the combat. Trust me, it's a deep, deep novel. So, let's start with the story of the game.
Chapter 1. The Knight and the Alchemist.
You know what RPGs are like, you know that they can be a, well, slow burn. And when this one started off with two friends just picking mushrooms in the forest, I gotta say, I was wondering when the oil is gonna get these robots moving. The good news is, it didn't take long for them to set that oil on fire. Don't get me wrong, the story is not going to set your world on fire, just this village. But not long in, I had 3 party members and I could feel the light-hearted, funny and, dare I say, punny vibes the 3 were giving off. The overall plot, while not mind-bending, was rather enjoyable, but the real gold comes from the writing. There were a few jokes that, let's just say, bring all the boys to the yard and their life is better than yours. The forest and the village that I just mentioned, they act as a sort of tutorial that will introduce you to the game's 3 main mechanics, which is its combat, its exploration, and its dialogue. Now, this dialogue is actually spoken in a type of robot language. That means you're going to have to do some reading, but it only pops up here and there in short bursts, so it never feels like they were trying to reach the 14-hour playtime by racking up that word count. Let's talk about exploration. Now, the maps that you're going to be exploring are broken up into kind of long horizontal areas with very limited vertical movement. You're going to move up, down and left and right between zones, which might sound like it can get confusing after a while of maybe a larger zone. Luckily enough, there's not that many larger zones, so I never found myself getting lost. Plus, there is a handy map, which makes it very easy to find where you're going. While poking around this map, you're actually going to find some secrets. That could be because you chose to go left or right and one of the paths had some treasure chests to it, or it could be because you were poking in some off-screen areas and happened to find a secret lever or a secret path. If you're worried you're going to miss any secrets, there is actually a percentage that is displayed once you've finished a map that will tell you how much of the treasure you found. Now, you can actually go back into that map and find the treasure that you missed. However, it plays the story again. You keep everything you collected, but if there's any story and cutscenes and stuff like that, you're going to have to skip your way through it. Plus, with all the enemies back around the place, I found myself not as excited as I could be to go redo this. Now, the maps actually do play around with puzzles, and some of them are quite clever and will bend your brain a little bit. I do enjoy that they actually put these in here because it does break up the flow between combat, dialogue, exploration, and this just throws another spanner into that cog. One more thing that I really want to mention about exploration, the enemies are displayed on screen, but avoiding battles can be rather tricky because of the narrow nature of these maps. In fact, sometimes it can just be downright impossible. It is finally time that we get to talk about the combat. Now, it is deep, it is fast-paced and really, really strategic, but it does come with one imperfection. There is some stuff that will help kind of smooth out the imperfection, but it still might annoy some folks, so I feel like it's worth talking about. Now, the combat we're going to talk about here is from the point where you have 3 party members onwards, which is super early in the game anyway, like probably within the first hour. I just want to mention that so that you're not expecting something in the first hour and going, where is this? What is Eric talking about? Now, this game is all about deck building, and to go into that, I need to throw some numbers at you. So we're going to try to take it nice and slowly here so that we can all walk through the forest of numbers together. So for starters, you're going to have, obviously, 3 fighters on the field, and each one of those fighters has a total of 8 cards they bring to the battle. So if we're all on board here, that makes a total of 24 cards in your pool of cards or your deck. At the start of a battle, you will draw 6 cards from your deck, and each turn you can play 3 of these 6. Now, after each turn, you will regain whatever cards you use, so you will have a total of 6 cards again. The good news is that you're never going to have to worry about running out of those cards because it just recycles them from that same pool of 24. When that runs out, it'll just refresh and just keep going. Now, this is where it gets really fun. For those of you who like to get the juices flowing to the frontal cortex, this is basically brain Viagra. Okay, so you have this Steam power to manage. You'll notice the cogs at the top of the screen. That is your Steam power. Weaker cards will build the Steam power. Strong ones will use it. You notice the cogs on each card will tell you if it's going to use it. So this is basically like playing on a seesaw. The higher you go, or the more cogs you have, the more damage you can do to the other person when you come back down. The important thing to remember is that you have to manage it. You do not want to get caught in a bad situation where you need healing and don't have any steam. You're basically on a one-way ticket to Reviveville, and at the cost of those revives, you do not want to be buying them. Alright, if you stuck with me there, you have your head out of the clouds and into the steam. But we got some more exciting stuff to talk about here, because there are things called heroic chains. These chains are when you play 3 cards from the same character in a row. You'll get a 4th follow-up attack that depends on what weapon you have equipped. Now you want to be chaining like your life depends on it, because if you are playing on normal or hard difficulty, it does. I actually haven't played easy, so I can't tell you, but I will quickly mention that the difficulty can actually be changed at any point. So at the start of the game, it's not too important if you choose a harder one or an easier one and want to move up or down. You can. I did actually play my entire playthrough on normal. I had a couple of deaths, but I found it fairly well balanced. Plus, leveling up is actually really easy and really rewarding. I found myself leveling up after not that many battles, and the reward that I mentioned was just like quite a lot of health or quite a lot of attack or damage. Now we are already so deep in the battle system, but if you think it's already over, you're wrong. We have to go deeper here because there's more to it. First of all, there's the stuff that we don't have to go into, like there's elements and there's buffs and there's debuffs, but there's one thing that we really have to talk about. And it's actually, in my opinion, probably the most, or one of the most important things to this battle system, and that's discarding. To understand why this is so important, we first have to understand the frustration that I keep alluding to from the start and from the middle and from here, and that is the randomness. So card combat for me really hits the nail on the head in so many ways, but where it misses the nail and just sticks out like a sore thumb is in its randomness. You never know what card is going to come out of your deck next. You might just be hoping for a card that maybe doesn't come. You might even be needing that card to survive. But this is where discard comes in. It's not a fix to this problem, it's not going to guarantee you the card that you need, but it helps a lot. So each turn, and I can't stress this enough, it's every turn, you can discard 2 cards. And in some cases, depending on what you have equipped or what ability you use, it can be more. So this is basically just swapping 2 cards over, meaning you get another couple of attempts when a bad draw comes your way. I'm going to do a tips and tricks, at least I think, because I want to go deep into why you should be doing this pretty much every turn. It's key to forward thinking in this game. Sorry I went super deep on the combat there. I'm just super passionate about the technical side of it. Now I do want to talk about the equipment and the items and the cards and that sort of thing that you're going to be doing outside of the combat. But before I move on to it, there was one thing that I forgot to mention, and that is that you can actually speed up combat and speed up a lot of the other stuff. So when you're exploring the map, you can run around, or if you're in the combat, you can hold down the trigger and it will speed up parts of the combat. This is actually massively useful and something that you can even just toggle to be on all the time, which, to be honest, I held it down basically all the time. I might as well have had it on. So back to the equipment, item and cards, there is of course a shop that you can buy and craft more of these, or you can find them on the map. Some things feel a little bit pricey, so I did actually find myself holding back on buying a lot of stuff until near the end of the game. Now let's talk about the cards for your eventually more than 3 heroes. I mentioned that each hero can equip 8 cards. Now these 8 cards don't actually have to be different. You do have a certain amount of each type of card. And by the end, you're going to have a really large variety of cards. And this was amazing because you really can customize your style, like a lot. The thing is, I didn't. I found what I liked and I just ran with it. That's me though, and that's personally speaking. I don't think everyone will be like that. In fact, I read all the cards that I was getting and I was excited at the prospect of making different builds. But by the time I was doing this, it was too late in the game and I'd found something that already worked, so as I said, I just kind of stuck with that. This is why I would like to see a new game plus, but the game doesn't have one, because I could keep all my cards, I could keep all my party members, and I could then step out of my comfort zone. So that was one thing that I thought was missing, and I forgot to mention you can upgrade your cards, so that would also work for just upgrading your cards and taking them into the next playthrough. As I've mentioned before, the game lasted me 14 hours, and I almost wish it was longer. That's not a dig at the game. That rather is a compliment about how much I enjoyed it. Actually, while we're on that, my 14 hours was just to completion of the game, and there is still a lot of maps that I have not 100%ed. There is like extra content for me that I'm not going to mention because it's spoilerific, but there's other stuff that I can actually go do in the game, so that's certainly not the end for me. There's still more content that I can and will dive into. I think in the end in SteamWorld, rolling the dice on combat is going to grind some people's gears, but me personally, I loved every deep strategic minute of it. Except for those few times that I needed that healing card and it just wouldn't come. If you're after a light-hearted RPG set in the lovely robotic world of SteamWorld, then I suggest stop playing 52 Pickup and go down to that shop, or the eShop, and purchase SteamWorld Quest.